Tonight, we're going to continue our studies with regards to Diaspora. But before we do this, before we go into it, let us have a word of prayer and ask our Heavenly Father to bless us tonight as we bring forth this information to the house of Israel. Baruch atah Yahuwah Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu et derek haYeshua b'Mashiach Yeshua. Abba, I'm grateful to you for your love and your mercy, which truly endures forever. I'm thanking you, Abba, for this opportunity to be in your presence with those of us who are hungry to learn the truth. I pray that you'll fill our lives with understanding and help us to walk in righteousness and follow the path that leads to Zion. I pray for our families scattered worldwide that you'd give them hope, encouragement, and allow them, Father, to stay faithful even until the end. I pray for our brothers who are not feeling so well, our brothers and sisters who are not doing so well. I pray that you will encourage them, uplift their spirit, break the spirit of depression from off of them, the spirit of despair. I pray that you put within them hope, joy, and peace. Father, I pray for our loved ones who are struggling with families issues. I pray, Father, that you'll also help them. As you know full well, in these last days, there'll be members of the family who will reject the understanding of the Torah, the scriptures, and cleave onto strange doctrines. I pray that you will help our awakened Hebrews to be stronger than before, to understand that this walk is not an easy walk and that they need to hold on and to overcome. Bless all our listeners from the four corners of the earth. You know exactly where our people are and who they are. Abba, we love you. We give praises unto your name. We thank you. In Yeshua's name, amen. So, family, I welcome you all again. I thank you all for being here. Greet you all in the name of our King. Tonight, we are going to, of course, continue our studies with Diaspora. It's a very challenging study, can wear you out because there's so much information, so much to the point where I have to put a little disclaimer here. Our studies for tonight is going to cover the aspect of the Native American Indians, the Hebrews. And we've looked at the sayings from many scholars and whatnot who have said that we, those people who have been taken on the slave ships over to North, Central America, and throughout the world, the transatlantic slave trade, that we are Hebrews. We've looked at information to show that from the Latin or Spanish side of things, that they're Hebrews who have been assimilated into Spain and Latin American countries. Now we're going to take a look at the idea of Hebrews being from the so-called Native American perspective. And hopefully it will help us gain some understanding and to add to our resources the information that is needed to give us some direction. We have to be very careful when we are in this captivity not to assume the role of the Most High, to presume that we know more than is given to us. Let me read this disclaimer. The following information was extracted from Eurocentric scholastic resources or sources. All the information provided is subject to change, which is a reflection of those who holds control, who controls the flow of information throughout this world. Our position is based on the unchanging word of Elohim. My reason for putting this up is so we will understand that every book that we read, every book that we purchase, it comes from the Europeans who controls the information, the flow of information. They're the ones in control of the publishing companies and has been so for quite some time. When we read the book of Josephus, we read the Apocrypha with the Maccabees, we can see that when the Grecians took control of this earth, they also controlled the libraries. They disrupted information. And according to the scholars, Hebrew scholars, they are the ones who would put whatever they wanted to put as the truth. When Rome took over the controls, family, they also set up and controlled information. As the historians say, whoever win the wars, I'm just paraphrasing it, is the one who controls the flow of information. And so, you know how the Europeans are very good at changing the information, changing contracts. The Native Americans once said that you can't trust the Europeans because they make these treaties, these contracts, and then they break it. So it's difficult to really hold on to anything that they say as truth. All we have is the scriptures. That's the truth. Okay. So they will put out, when they back in the 1700s, the 1800s, the 1600s, the 1400s, whatever, they would put out, this is the information, this is the truth, and whatever it is. Later on, they would come and say, no, 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 that's not the truth. And that information was wrong. Those people were putting that thing out based upon this whole idea of this and that. So all we can do is present the information and hold on to the Most High's word. Because we have the Most High's word, we're going to turn to Matthew. As a matter of fact, let me pull it up on the screen. Matthew 13. And Brother Felix said it very well last week. He said about the wheat and the tares. So let's read that. The book of Matthew, chapter 13. So that we can understand, Mishpachah, that the job of knowing exactly who's who and whatnot, that's not our responsibility. The Most High is going to awaken his people wherever we are. And we just leave it to him for that. And we thank him that he's in control and not us, because we will make all the mistakes. We will root out. We'll go through the garden in this world and we'll start pulling things up. Let's see. I think it's down in 25 somewhere. 13. Yeah, 13, but I think it's over in yeah, let's go to verses 24. Matthew 13 and 24. Let's read from there, okay? So let's get your mic. All right. So go ahead and read.
Shalom, family. Another parable put he forth unto them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man which sowed good seed in his field.
And his field is the world. Let's continue.
But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat, and went his way. But when the blade was sprung up and brought forth fruit, then appeared the tares also. So the servants of the householder came and said unto him, Sir, didst not thou sow good seed in thy field? From whence then have it tares? He said unto them, an enemy hath done this. The servants said unto him, Will thou then that we go and gather them up? But he said, Nay, lest while you gather up the tares, you root up also the wheat with them.
So we can see the problem with our understanding. We think we know pretty much everything, and all the information that we're putting out is based upon what was given to us. So we don't have any way of going to these far-flung countries or even going to Smithsonian, the archives within these museums and whatnot. We don't have the ability to read all these different languages. We don't have the education to decipher different languages and whatnot. We weren't the ones who stole and destroyed peoples and destroyed their languages and just broke down their buildings and killed their children and killed out the elder ones and forced people to change. And we weren't the ones who did all that. It was the Europeans who primarily traveled throughout the earth and forced people to accept their systems and whatnot. So the information that we have is very, very limited, but we have a foundation which is in the word of the Most High. But let's read on. He says, lest while we gather up the tares, you root up also the wheat with them. Verses 30.
Let both grow together until the harvest.
The harvest, read.
And in the time of the harvest, I will say to the reapers, gather ye together first the tares, and bind them in bundles to be burnt, to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn.
All right, so that's all we need. But the field, of course, is the world, and the wheat are regarded as the elect ones who that the Most High had made a promise. Let's go to Jeremiah 31. The Most High made a promise to Israel, which he called his elect, that he's going to regather us from the four corners. We have so many scriptures to prove this to be so. And the promise is already in the stars. He says, if people can number the stars and whatnot, if you can count those stars, if there's a man who has the ability to number all the stars and whatnot, or to go and measure the depths of the ocean, he said that and Israel will no longer be a people unto him. So he's made that challenge very difficult. So people cannot take his place of knowing anything about Israel. Only the Most High can do that job, okay? So let's see Jeremiah 31, and let's pick it up at verses 1.
Jeremiah 31 and 1. At the same time, saith Yahuwah, will I be the Elohim of all the families of Israel.
All the families of who?
Israel.
Uh-huh.
And they shall be my people.
They shall be my people. Read.
Thus saith Yahuwah, the people which were left of the sword found grace in the wilderness, even Israel, when I went to cause him to rest. Yahuwah have appeared of old unto me, saying, Yea, I have loved thee with an everlasting love.
An everlasting, for God so loved the world of Israel. He has always loved us with an everlasting love. Let's continue on.
Therefore, with loving kindness have I drawn thee. Again, I will build thee, and thou shalt be built, O Virgin of Israel.
Now, before we continue, in verses 2, it says, found grace in the wilderness. When you go to the book of Revelations, you'll see Revelations chapter 12, verses 6. It says there was a woman who brought forth the man-child, which is the Messiah. She also went into the wilderness. Is that correct?
Sure.
That's Israel. That's the house of Israel. Okay. So we know this is all about Israel from the beginning to the end. There's no question about it. Let's continue where you stop.
And thou shalt again be adorned with thy tabrets, and shalt go forth in the dances of them that make merry. Thou shalt yet plant vines upon the mountains of Samaria. The planters shall plant, and shall eat them as common things.
Mm-hmm.
For there shall be a day that the watchman upon the Mount Ephraim shall cry, Arise he, and let us go up to Zion unto Yahuwah our Elohim.
So once we have returned back to our territories, all the tribes of Israel, there will be, I wouldn't say a parade, but we will be making pilgrimage, an aliyah, up to Mount Zion, okay, to do our parts, our sacrifices with song and celebrations. It'll be a joyful time. Right now, it's difficult. I'm hearing from Hebrews who are struggling to hold on, and Hebrews who are rejoicing. And it's not going to be an easy walk, Mishpachah, but we have to hold on and be encouraged and so forth. And hopefully, this class will help to encourage us, because we have so many Hebrews who are trying to keep others down, saying, well, you're not a Hebrew, based on certain things that they're seeing, and certain prejudices or certain things that happen throughout history. The only thing we can do is say, listen, brothers, listen, sisters, let us not overwhelm ourselves. Let's focus upon our own situation, our own position. Let's try to hold on, because either way you look at it, if we find out that most of us are not Hebrews, I say the Most High has pulled everything and says, hey, you're not a Hebrew, but I'll take you in as a servant because you love Israel. You have been preaching about Israel. You've been focused upon teaching the Torah. You have been doing things according to the commandments. I have room for you. Brothers and sisters, I don't have a problem with that. I will be as Eliezer amongst Abraham. I'll find my place. You can find your place. So let us not be caught up too much in the arguments of trying to point out who's a wheat from the tares and so forth. And let our king handle that situation. That is too big for you and I. Too big of shoes to walk in. Okay? Let's continue on.
Verse 7.
Mm-hmm.
For thus saith Yahuwah, sing with gladness for Jacob.
For who?
For Jacob.
For Jacob. It's his time. Read.
And shout among the chief of the nations.
Mm-hmm.
Publish ye praise ye, and say, O Yahuwah, save thy people, the remnants of Israel.
Read.
Behold, I will bring them from the north country,
Mm-hmm.
and gather them from the coast of the earth, and with them the blind, and the lame, the women with child, and her that travaileth with child together.
So we can see clearly that there will be children. There will be those that are still need some correction. That's going to happen in the kingdom. The Most High is going to fix things up. He was only giving us a little taste of his power and everything else. Okay, just a little taste when he came the first time. Read on.
A great company shall return thither.
Uh-huh.
They shall come with weeping and with supplications. Will I lead them? I will cause them to walk by the rivers of waters in a straight way, wherein they shall not stumble. For I am a father to Israel, and Ephraim is my firstborn.
Ephraim is my firstborn, because, see, when Jacob lost Joseph, it's as if he lost his firstborn, because Joseph was the one that he really loved the most out of the whole bunch. And he wanted to make Joseph the head. You see, that's the reason why he blessed Ephraim with a double portion, putting the name of Joseph upon Ephraim. Okay, and Ephraim was the youngest. He was younger than Manasseh. And when Joseph saw what was happening, when Jacob was about to die and he was blessing the two sons, he crossed his hands, and Joseph says, "What are you doing, Daddy?" He says, I know, my son. I know, my son. There's a reason for everything. There's a reason. And when the portions of land came up, the survey of the land, the lots were to be given out. Ephraim got the northern part, the head part, okay? Judah got the southern part. So there's a reason for everything. We don't have all the answers. We can pick at the pieces and try to make sense of it. But our Elohim has a purpose for everything. So let's be patient. Let's not jump too far ahead and try to make too many arguments and stuff. Speaking to the mic. Let the Mishpachah hear your voice.
The Most High is interested in the multiplication of the seed of Israel, fruitfulness. And that's what Ephraim means, to be fruitful, double fruitful.
Hallelujah.
Okay? So that's the reason why he made Ephraim the head. And there are more secrets
you
to
like
it,
that
but we
fruitful
will,
stuff, right?
yeah, but we can talk that out another time.
All right, hallelujah. Let us continue. Where did you stop?
I stopped on 10. I'm reading 10 now.
Go ahead.
Hear the word of Yahuwah, O ye nations, and declare it in the isles afar off, and say, He that scattered Israel will gather them and keep him as a shepherd doeth his flock.
So this is a news announcement from heaven. It says, "Hear the word of Yahuwah, O you nations, and declare it in the isles afar off, even to the very islands. Declare it. Why? Because you see, Mishpachah, Israel is scattered even in those little islands.
Absolutely.
And we are not privy to all the different information. I mean, do we have the ship logs of who was taken
And where?
and shipped back and forth and where and the names, the list, who died in the ocean? Do we have the logs for that? See, we are focused upon only from what came from the west coast of Africa to the rest of the world. And we're not seeing that on the east side of Africa or from the Mediterranean, who was placed on Roman galleons, who was sent over to the Arabian ships and taken to Asia, who came over on this side of the world, and from South America, from Mexico, from all these countries, placed on Spanish galleons and shipped to different parts of the world. We don't look at those things. We're only focused upon our skin complexion and focus upon certain phenotypes and whatnot. And that is blinding us from seeing other things. And then when we see a little piece of history, we want to cover that because it doesn't fit our box. Because we already created a box and say, this is how, everything has to fit this box. It doesn't work like that, Mishpachah. We have to understand that we are part of the whole. We're not the whole. We're only parts of the whole. Okay, let's read on.
Verse 11. For Yahuwah have redeemed Jacob and ransomed him from the hand of him that was stronger than he.
The one that was stronger is symbolically of Esau, right? Esau was the hunter. He's the one that was, pushing the bow in people's face, his gun in people's faces, right? Jacob, I'm coming to get you. I got my 400 men here with me, going to bring you back to Mount Seir. Jacob says, you go ahead. We'll catch up with you later on. And Jacob took another trail. Okay. But Esau has always tried to use force. That's how he lives, by force. Let's continue on.
Therefore they shall come and sing in the heights of Zion, and shall flow together to the goodness of Yahuwah, for wheat and for wine and for oil and for the young of the flock and of the herd. And their soul shall be as a watered garden, and they shall not sorrow any more at all.
We will not sorrow any more at all. I think that is what we're looking for. Is that correct?
Correct.
Let's read some more.
Then shall the virgin rejoice in the dance, both young men and old together.
Notice it says the young men and old together. In the resurrection, when he brings us back to our territories, we're going to live a long life. We will have children. They're still going to have marriages. They're still going to have, the things that we have right now. It's just that there won't be harassment, mortgages, and things like that. We're not going to have those problems. Everything is going to be under a different government. We will have an opportunity to know what peace is all about. And we're still going to have those other nations around. They're not going to have any power over us. We're going to have power over them. Yes.
Just because, in Christianity, we were taught, something completely different. And so, but when you read the scriptures, it explains it very clearly that Yeshua there are two kingdoms.
Absolutely.
Okay, and Yeshua has to reign for 1,000 years. Okay, and to restore all things, as he had said.
All things. So Christianity has fooled so many of us to believe that
yes,
we either going to go up to heaven,
yes,
or some kind of a strange,
yes,
mixture of things. We're going to be on another planet, like the Mormons say. All kinds of weird doctrine. Yes.
Yes, because they're taking that from the fact where you mentioned at the last trump, the dead in Christ and all of that, and we shall be changed and from mortal to mortality. But there is a period of time, because in that same chapter, Shaul talks about, "O death, where is your sting?"
That's
and
right.
so on and so forth. But we realize in the book of Revelation, he says that is going to be the last thing to cast into the lake of fire, and that's after the 1,000 years.
That's correct.
Okay, so they just they don't understand how it works, so that's why.
So the Most High has the ability to do many, many, many resurrections, Mishpachah. I mean, we have seen instances in the Old Testament where bodies, were resurrected. Remember the child who was dead? Remember the one who fell on Elisha's bones and resurrected? I mean, what about Jairus' daughter? Is she around somewhere? Well, anyway, our subject is not about resurrection. It's about this history that we need to take a look at. Resurrection of Israel. That's
yes.
that is correct.
Yeah.
Let's read on some more.
Okay, and it says, verse 13, I'm reading it again. It says, "Then shall the virgin rejoice in the dance, both young men and old together, for I will turn their mourning into joy, and will comfort them and make them rejoice for their sorrow. And I will satiate the soul of the priest with fatness, and my people shall be satisfied with my goodness, saith Yahuwah."
All right, that's all we need. That's all we need. So Mishpachah, let's take a peek. And as a matter of fact, let's go over to verses 31. Because this is something that is often read or spoken of in the book of Hebrews, and people just ignore. It's like they hear the word new covenant, but that word new covenant is actually renewed covenant. It's like a man who's married to a woman. They have some problems. They separated for a while. Okay, probably got a divorce and stuff. But she stayed to herself. He stayed to himself, and then later on, they decide to, you know what? I can't live without you, and you can't live without me. Let's come back together. So they come back to the place where they all started, and they don't start something new. They renew their vows. Okay, and they refresh themselves and recommit themselves to the contract, and that's what new covenant is all about. It's not new like it's something new. It's just renewing something that was established before. Let's read verses 31.
Verse 31? Yeah. Jeremiah 31.
Jeremiah 31 and verses 31.
Okay. "Behold, the days come, saith Yahuwah, that I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, which my covenant they break, although I was an husband unto them, saith Yahuwah."
Says he was a husband unto them, plural. Okay, them. Read on.
Verse 33, "But this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel. After those days, saith Yahuwah, I will put my law in their inward parts."
Wait a minute. He's going to put the law in their hearts. But when you listen to churchianity, they say that the law is done away with, nailed to the cross. So it's as if we have two different gods. One God who's saying in the form of Jesus Christ for churchianity, that is saying the law is done away with via the spokesman Paul, the apostle. And then we have another God who's saying, another Elohim who's saying that he will do this after those days. He will put the laws in their inward parts. Mm-hmm. So which one is correct? Let's continue on.
Mm-hmm.
And
I will put after those days, saith Yah, I will put my law in their inward parts and write it in their hearts, and will be their Elohim, and they shall be my people.
They will be my denomination.
My people.
They will be my denomination.
No.
Read on, verse 34.
And they shall teach no more every man his neighbor, and every man his brother, saying, Know Yahuwah, for they shall all know me, from the least of them to the greatest of them, saith Yahuwah.
So we don't have to go around evangelizing and teaching on the streets and preaching. All that missionary stuff will be over. Okay? Let's continue.
For I will forgive their iniquity, and I will remember their sin no more.
So right now, the sin is still remembered. We're still living out Deuteronomy chapter 28, Leviticus 26, and everything that is pertaining to the Torah.
Correct.
Both the positive and the negative.
Yes.
It's part of the whole, okay?
Yes. Because the two houses are still split apart. They're not one house yet. So he has to bring them both together, and they shall be one stick in his hand again.
One stick.
One stick in his hand. And that's when he makes he renews the covenant with them.
Absolutely. Let's continue on.
Verse 35. Thus saith Yahuwah, which giveth the sun for a light by day, and the ordinances of the moon and of the stars for a light by night.
So, did NASA put the moon up there? I mean, they got satellites. Now they're looking to put up a satellite that will reflect light from, will be the brightest light in the sky or something. And I don't think it's NASA. It's one of those European countries, Russia or China, one of those places that want to put out a satellite that is be bright, almost like another star or sun. Okay? But the Most High says, I'm the one who put the ordinances of the moon and the stars and sun and so forth. Let's see what he says.
Which divideth the sea when the waves thereof roar. Yahuwah of hosts is his name.
Read.
If those ordinances depart from before me, saith Yahuwah, then the seed of Israel also shall cease from being a nation before me forever.
So we read in the book of Revelations that the sun, the moon will not give his light anymore, that the Most High will be the light thereof. We'll have no need for the sun and the moon. That is when there will be no more seed of Israel. Will be changed. But before that time, there's going to be a seed of Israel, because the sun, moon, and stars will be around in the Messiah's kingdom. It's going to be here.
Yes, because it is in the Father's kingdom where he says there'll be no night there.
No night. Okay, let's continue.
Verse 37, thus saith Yahuwah, if heaven can be measured, and the foundations of the earth searched out beneath, I will also cast off all the seed of Israel for all that they have done, saith Yahuwah.
All right, that's all we need. We'll stop here on the scriptures, and we'll go into a presentation. But notice he says, if the foundations of the earth are searched out beneath, if they can find that. Now, imagine there's a volcano spewing lava from in Hawaii, and they're watching this thing carefully because they're saying it may be another Pompeii. Those people can't go into the depths of the earth because it's too hot.
Oh, they can't measure heaven.
They can't measure heaven. How many satellites or probes they've sent out and those things get lost? Don't let them fool you, Mishpachah. They send a person to so-called space, to the highest part so they can travel in the space stations. And then when they bring them back, the person, they got to decompress or whatever you call it, because the bodies can't tolerate that type of environment. They're trying to study how the plants are growing up far up in the atmosphere. and then come back with that information on the earth and modify it so that they can force the things to grow up in space. Why don't they just be God and grow, make their own, create their own stuff from nothing? Anyway, that's another class. Let's go into our presentation, and let's take a look and see some things here, Mishpachah, because you know how the world is already. They profess to have all the truth. Okay, so last week we had an opportunity to look at Taino Indians and Professor Raniel Rodriguez in Puerto Rico, who has found these special stones with Paleo Hebrew on it. And he said, you know, I'm no expert at this stuff. I'm trying to get people who can help decipher this information. And he acknowledged that 136 years ago, a priest had these information among himself. And now the Europeans have put their hands on the stones and taken them to museums and whatnot. I'm telling you, they're the ones who control the flow of information. And they will shut up everything from you and I. If anything looks too good to be true, if we can read or write, or if we can have access to a little bit of information, they're going to publish something and says, well, whatever that was out there before was false stuff. I know we said it, you know, was Paleo Hebrew, but no, we had it upside down. It's something totally different. It was a souffle. So now we have to go back and says, you see, those people are not Hebrews because the scholars say, first the scholars say this, now the scholars say something else. But Reniel, if you have a chance, Mishpachah, go check it out. He has a lot of videos, both in English and Spanish. And he has lectures showing the richness of this information. And he even said that there's a place in Puerto Rico, a beach, that about 6 feet of sand is covering a lot of information, some rocks. And the only way you can see that is when the tide pulls all that sand out. Certain times of the year or whatever. It pulls all the sand out, and then you can go and look. But when the tide comes in, it covers it back up. So what do? I mean, do you build like something around it to keep all that water out? The Most High probably is keeping certain things at bay. Who knows? So we looked at certain information, and I don't want to go back over that again. Let's move on. So we looked at the Taino Indians, that they are scattered throughout the Caribbean and certain parts of Florida. And news that were published showing the Taínos are still alive. Okay. We looked at all that information before. All right, so let's move on. So these stones show that in Puerto Rico and other places that there were Paleo Hebrew. Now, of course, we're always going to have the argument of, well, you know, somebody brought it there to the island, but the Taino Indians themselves are not Hebrew, because we have checked the DNA and this, that, and the other. And let me tell you, the Most High didn't say anywhere in prophecy that he's going to use DNA for anything at all. He didn't say that. He says we're going to go on ships. We're going to be the lowest among the people. There will be other nations over us. All of these things are going to happen. We're going to be taken to the four corners. I mean, as the list goes on and on and on. All you have to do is check the list out, Mishpachah, and you're going to see the truth, okay? Check it out. So I want to go to a book. This is the book right here. This is a reprint. It's called The 10 Tribes of Israel, or the True History of the North American Indians, showing that they are the descendants of these 10 tribes. You can go to Google, pull it up. You probably can download the whole thing for free, or you can go to Amazon and buy a hard copy for yourself like I did, okay? So I want to read some things here. What's on the screen is a part of it, but I think I'm going to go and read a portion right before that. And that's page 81, which I have page 81 here, but I'm going to read from page 80, just a portion of that. And then I'll have my son, he's going to read the rest of it, and we'll continue looking at some history. Remember, the information that we have, this is not from Hebrews like you and I. These are from European people back in the 1800s, 1800s, who have documented certain things that they have seen. Remember, they always send scouts to do reconnaissance before they take over people's territories. That's what they do. Before they kill the people, before they ship them off into slavery, they will record information and they will hold it in their possession because they don't believe that you and I would ever be free or ever have the power to say anything against them. So they'll put trophies and information right in front of your face and say, I dare you. I dare you. Okay? So all we're going to do is read what they're saying, because we have a lot of skeptics and whatnot. And, what can we say? What can we do? Anyway, on page number 80, looks like the second paragraph, it says, our southern Indians have also a tradition among them, which they firmly believe, that of old time their ancestors lived beyond a great river, that 9 parts out of 10 of their nation passed over the river, but the remainder refused and stayed behind, that they had a king when they lived far in the west who left 2 sons, that one of them with a number of his people traveled a great way for many years till they came to the Delaware River and settled there. Then it goes on about the French and so forth. Let me see if I can skip down just a little bit. Let's see. Okay. It is said among their principal or beloved men that they have it handed down from their ancestors that the book which the white people have was once theirs. Let me say that again. It is said among their principal or beloved men. Now, this is a European Gentile recording things that were said to him, okay? It is said among their principal or chiefs, okay, or beloved men, that they have it handed down from their ancestors, that the book which the white people have was once theirs, that while they had it, they prospered exceedingly, but that the white people bought it of them and learned many things from it. Does that sound familiar? Does it sound like Ashkenazim and so forth? Learned many things from it, while the Indians lost their credit, offended the Great Spirit, and suffered exceedingly from the neighboring nations, that the Great Spirit took pity on them and directed them to this country, that on their way they came to a great river which they could not pass, when God dried up the waters, and they passed over dry shod. They also say that their forefathers were possessed of extraordinary divine spirit, call it prophets, okay, by which they foretold future events and controlled the common course of nature, and by this they transmitted to their offspring on condition of their obeying the sacred laws. Now, y'all can see that on the screen now. Let me get my little pointer here. Give me 1 second. Okay, no, this is my pointer. Sacred laws. Get rid of that. Let me get the red one so y'all can see. That they did by these means bring down showers of plenty on their people. So when we obeyed the Most High's commandments and we prayed for rain, we got rain. Okay, we got the blessings. So when you read Deuteronomy 28, it says, "I will make your heaven and your floor of brass and so forth." Okay, all right, but that this power for a long time past had entirely ceased. Right here, entirely ceased. So let's read on. Go ahead and read for me, son. Right here. Let the young ones read. I'll try. Let's see. How's that? Okay.
The Reverend Gentleman mentioned in the introduction, who had taken so much pains in the year 1764 or 5 to travel far westward to find Indians who had never seen a white man, informed the writer of these memoirs that far to the northwest of the Ohio, he attended a party of Indians to a treaty with Indians from the west of the Mississippi. Here he found the people he was in search of.
And conversed.
He conversed with their beloved man who had never before seen a white man by the assistance of 3 grades of interpreters. The Indian informed him that one of their most ancient traditions was that a great while ago they had a common father who lived towards the rising of the sun and governed the whole world.
All right, let me go to the next. Okay. Oops. Governed the whole world. Okay. Let me see. Go ahead and read. Yep. Go ahead and read. Continue.
All the white people's heads were under his feet.
That all the white people's heads were under his feet. Read.
That he had 12 sons.
That he had what?
12 sons.
So who had the 12 sons? Jacob. Now this is a European, and this is what you're looking at is a photo copy, basically, a reprint of that book. Okay. So he says that the Great Spirit, by virtue of some special gift from him, that no, I'm sorry, I'm jumping way ahead. I'm jumping ahead, I'm sorry. That all the white people's heads were under his feet, that he had 12 sons. Read on. By whom?
By whom he administered his government. That his authority was derived from the Great Spirit, by virtue of some special gift from him. The 12 sons behaved very bad and tyrannized over the people, abusing their power to a great degree, so as to offend the Great Spirit exceedingly.
Doesn't that sound like the prophets? Doesn't that sound like the scripture? Read on.
That he, being thus angry with them, suffered the white people to introduce spirituous liquors among them.
Spiritual liquors. What do we call that? No, spiritual liquors. We call it doctrine. Yeah, rum in terms of over here, but they are given an account from when they were back in the land of promise, how disobedient we were, and that these other nations came in and introduced basically doctrines. Okay, remember Babylon, that woman had a cup with all types of wine mixtures and stuff. Okay, read on.
Suffered the white people to introduce spirituous liquors among them, made them drunk, stole the special gift of the Great Spirit from them, and by this means usurped the power over them. And ever since the Indians' heads were under the white people's feet, but that they also had a tradition that the time would come.
That the time would come. The Indians had a tradition that the time would come, read,
when the Indians would regain the gift of the Great Spirit from the white people.
From the who?
From the white people.
Read on.
And with it, their ancient power.
So once we regain the Torah, the scriptures back again, read on. We're going to have the power, and let's read on.
And the white people's heads would again be under the Indians' feet.
Isn't that prophecy? Isn't that prophecy? So this European is getting a first-hand account that the Indians have a biblical prophecy. Once upon a time, 12 sons in the land of promise had spiritual powers, and then we disobeyed. We started hurting each other. The brotherly love thing went out the window. That's why we're trying to enforce the understanding, trying to push within our minds. We have to learn how to love each other. Some of us are too quick to throw a rock. Too quick to throw a rock. And when correction is given, or when or something is said about to correct certain problems, some people get offended and run away. How do we help Israel when Israel don't want to be helped, or find offense some way or the other? So, or point fingers and say, well, these people are not this. And so where is this guy getting this from? I mean, they're not making this stuff up. Or are they? Perhaps they're making it up. This is exactly what the prophets were saying. The Deuteronomy says that if we keep all the laws, statutes, and commandments, we're going to be, speaking to the mic, we're going to be the head above. There are two mics. There's another one right over there.
Yeah.
We're going to be the head above all these nations.
Right. And they will be the tail.
But then when we keep, when we disobey the Most High, we're going to be below.
Tail. That's right.
And the blessings that should come to us
will go to them.
Go to them. We're going to borrow from them.
Yeah.
But then it's going to flip again.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to borrow from us.
Yeah.
He says we're going to suck the milk from who? The Gentiles. You know what the milk is? All the substance. Whatever they eat goes into the body of the, like, let's say with a woman, whatever she eats goes into her body and turns into food. It turns into nutriments to nourish the baby, to make the baby fat and healthy. Okay? And when the baby grows up and has teeth, starts to bite, you don't need that nourishment anymore. So we're going to milk these nations in our infancy for all that they have done to us. And then when we have started to grow the teeth, we don't need them anymore. So let's look at that again. Read that part again. The last part. But
that they also had a tradition that the time would come when the Indians would regain the gift of the Great Spirit from the white people, and with it their ancient power, when the white people's heads would again be under the Indians' feet.
I want to know, what is that gift? You know, the book of Deuteronomy says, I've given you good laws and good statutes. You remember that? Help me find that, please. Deuteronomy. And the book of Psalms says, I've never given that to any other people. I've only given the law, statutes, and commandments to Israel. Okay, so let's go to Deuteronomy 4 and verses 5. Let me make this a little bit smaller. Oops, did the opposite. Let's pull it back up. Okay, so let's read Deuteronomy real quick. Chapter 4 and verses 5. Mm-hmm. You want to read?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Yep.
Behold, I have taught you statutes and judgments, even as Yahuwah my Elohim commanded me, that you should do so in the land whither you go to possess it. Keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations, which shall hear all these statutes and say, surely this nation is a wise and understanding people. For what nation is there so great who have Yah so nigh unto them, as Yah our Elohim is in all things that we call upon him for? And what nation is there so great that have statutes and judgments so righteous as all this law, which I set before you this day?
All right, let's go to Nehemiah 9 and 13. Nehemiah 9 and 13. Let's see. 9 and 13. Okay. And let's see how it's described here. That these were some good stuff that we had received. Good things.
Nehemiah 9 and 13. Thou camest down also upon Mount Sinai, and spake with them from heaven, and gavest them right judgments and true laws, good statutes and commandments, and madest known unto them thy holy Shabbat, and commandest them precepts and statutes and laws by the hand of Moshe, thy servant.
All right, that's all we need. So you said you got the Psalms?
Psalms 147 and
Psalms 147.
Verse 19 and 20.
Psalms 147.
19 and 20.
147, 19, and 20. Let's go ahead and read.
It says, he sheweth his word unto Jacob, his statutes and his judgment unto Israel. He have not dealt so with any nation. And as for his judgments, they have not known them. Praise Yahuwah.
So we can read on and on to show and to prove that it was a good thing that the Most High gave unto Israel. And we can see clearly, it says, once, the Indians say, once we have regained back the book that was taken from us, we get the power. That's the word. Once the word goes back to them. See, why do you think that the missionaries went to the reservations? Why they always set up a reservation, a missionary outpost by the reservations? To pervert, to give the people spiritual liquor, to pervert the truth into Christianity, so they can't see their way. They only see in Jesus, and love, and that's it. And to go show up every Sunday and to do the cross and all that nonsense. They're not seeing that if I keep the commandments, the law, statutes, and commandments, that the Most High is going to grant you back the power that you once lost. So they have to go in there and keep you sedated, keep you on life water. Don't let you eat for yourself and feed on your own. They have to tell you, no, don't eat that. We're going to feed you this packaged stuff. Mishpachah. We're going to give you the fluoride in your stuff, in the water, to keep your minds weak. You never see, never understand. I mean, if you talk about ghettos, the Native American Indians are in ghettos today. Some serious ghettos, Mishpachah. Some ghettos that you probably would you lose your mind. Okay? So don't think, well, they have what do you call this, casino, that makes a difference. No, that is just the officer. Okay, that's the Dayton spirit. That's just, they always put one or two to give you that idea that some progress, or you're rising up, you're coming up. Let's continue with our slides. Okay, that's just that's a mirage, Mishpachah. That's not the real deal. So it misleads people. We're going to go to another book, another source. It's called Lost Tribes and Promised Lands by Ronald Sanders. From what I understand, Ronald Sanders is an Ashkenazim Jew. Okay, so once upon a time, I would say about a few years ago, this book used to go for about $2,400. $2,400 on Amazon. But now you can get it for $24 on Amazon. So if you have an opportunity, go to Amazon, buy a copy for yourself. Because you never know. Books, right now, I've been receiving emails with videos and news reports about the banishing of Bibles, the removal of Bibles from hotels. And I'll give you, as a matter of fact, I received a crate full of Bibles that was removed from, those Gideon Bibles? That was removed from hotel rooms. And they're starting to remove those things slowly and slowly, Mishpakat. At a point in time, you're not going to be able to find the word of Elohim, whether it's the New King James or any kind of version of the Bible. So if you have the opportunity to hold on to the information, hard copies, I'm not talking about some PDF, okay? Hard copies for yourself. Mishpachah, buy it, keep those things for yourself. So let's take a look at this. This is Lost Tribes in Promised Land by Ronald Sanders. There's some excerpts from it, and let's go ahead and read.
In September 1644, a Portuguese Marano named Antonio de Montesinos arrived in Amsterdam after having lived for some years in South America and proceeded to tell the leaders of their recently established Jewish community that there a story that caused them to think of him as a latter-day Eldad the Danite.
Eldad the Danite was a Sephardic Hebrew who heard of the tribes of Israel in Africa and certain places, and he took some travels and went to visit them, and he gave a little account. So this Portuguese Marano, remember we talked about the diaspora, Sephardic diaspora in Spain and Portugal and so forth. So he went out. He says, I'm going to be like him too and try to look for those tribes. But remember also, Mishpachah, that by the time that Isabella and Ferdinand decide to kick people out from Spain, many of the Hebrews were already assimilated to the point that they looked like many of those Spaniards that they lived around. In order for you to regain or retain certain prestige, because when the Muslims, the dark-skinned Muslims, had ruled over Europe for about 800 to 1,000 years, there was certain privileges that our people had while they were in southern Spain, and not southern Spain, southern Europe and France and other places too. We had a lot of privilege. And the European monarchies didn't like that too much. When the tide started to turn, we started to try to find ways to, stay either by converting to become Catholics, marrying certain people and whatnot. And through all of that assimilation, we find ourselves looking a certain way. So now, those who were of the dark complexion or brown complexion, or that looked less European, were kind of like ostracized. They were kicked out. They were like, nah, we don't want anything to do with you, by those who were lighter complexion. You start to see that Willie Lynch type of thing setting up there in those early days. So this this same Hebrew himself was like distancing himself from the idea of being connected to those that were dark skinned. So you're going to see a little bit of that in the next slide, I believe. So let's take a look and see on the next couple slides. Go ahead and read. 2.5 years. Hmm? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Let's see. All right.
2.5 years before, he told them while traveling the wild mountains of Quito, he had heard some of his Indian guides remark that the natives of that country deserved all the suffering they had undergone at the hands of the Spaniards. When he asked them to explain why they thought such a thing, they had replied mysteriously that it was because we so badly treated a holy people, the greatest in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing more had been offered by them on this point.
So he was hearing little bits and pieces of information, but he didn't forget it. He just couldn't make sense of it at the time. Read.
But later in the same conversation, Francisco, one of the Indian guides, had declared that his countrymen would be avenged upon the Spaniards in time anyway,
Mm-hmm.
by means of a people now hidden.
Read.
The two references apparently were to the same people, but Montesinos, not seeing their full meaning in that moment, had put the whole matter out of mind for the time being.
All right, let's go to our next slide, and let's make it bigger. Read.
Upon his return to Cartagena,
Mm-hmm.
the Judaizing Montesinos had found himself accused by the Inquisition and put in prison.
So the Spanish Inquisition was in full force, and he was placed in prison because he was a Hebrew. Read.
Praying for salvation in his cell one day, he was reciting what was by then a standard formula among New World Marranos.
Mm-hmm.
Blessed be the name of the Lord, who had not made me an idolater, a barbarian, a Negro, an Indian.
Uh-huh.
When suddenly he stopped. Those Indians, he told himself, they are Hebrews.
Mm-hmm.
Pondering this thought incredulously, and yet with growing conviction, he resolved that if he ever was released, he would seek out the Indian Francisco and try to learn the truth.
So you can see, as I mentioned before, right here, I underline it so you can see that was a thinking of the day. All right. But he realized something about the Indian, and we're going to pick that up as we continue in our next slide. So let's continue on.
Montesino's story, unclear as to the circumstances of his incarceration, is equally unclear as to those of his release.
Uh-huh.
But released he was, and he immediately went to Francisco.
All right, let's go to our next slide.
Revealing himself as a Jew, Montesinos proclaimed his conviction that Francisco's hidden people were the same race as he.
See? So at first he was like, he prayed, I don't want to be this, I don't want to be that, I don't want to be an Indian. But then later on he says, the Indians are part of my people. You see that? So limited information allowed them to think a certain way. Let's continue on.
The two men were soon back in the rugged mountains in which Francisco had made his initial revelation, marching relentlessly for a week before they finally came to a halt. It was a Saturday, Montesinos makes a point of telling us, and they had come to a river larger than the Duero. Are the echoes of the Sambation in all of this? Here, Francisco announced, is where your brothers will be seen.
As what he's talking about is the legend of the 10 tribes crossing over this river and coming over to another place, which is found in the book of Ezra, 2nd Ezra. But let's continue on.
Waving a banner high in the air, the Indian guide soon was greeted by a puff of smoke far beyond the other bank of the river in response to his signal.
All right, let's go to our next slide. Read.
The two men waited. Eventually, a canoe appeared, bearing 3 men and a woman, all of them Indians, to the place where Francisco and Montesinos were standing at the water's edge.
Read.
The woman got off and spoke to Francisco in an Indian tongue that Montesinos could not understand, although he could perceive that he was being identified in the conversation. She then turned to her male companions to explain the situation.
Read.
Upon hearing her words, they rose, went over to Montesinos, and, to his utter astonishment, said, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one.
So when he heard, when the she came over and she pronounced the Shema. She said the Shema to him, and he was astonished by this. Go ahead and read.
They had recited in Hebrew the fundamental credo of Judaism.
See that? So imagine he's going out, he's just basing this search on little bits and pieces of information, something about these people that, there must be more to them. And then when they did assign the puff of smoke for the signal, and it came over, hearing this thing in Hebrew was obviously astonishing, right? Read on.
A brief conversation then ensued in their common ancestral tongue, according to Montesinos, whose fluency in it is almost as perplexing to the reader of his narrative as is that of his three mysterious new companions.
Now listen to this.
They told him that they were themselves of the tribe of Reuben, and that the tribe of Joseph lived on an island nearby.
Read.
The day when they were at last to issue forth into the world was coming soon, they explained.
Let's pause for a moment. These are two separate books. One of them, excuse me, is dealing with, since it's Spanish, has to be the Latin section, the Latin America section. The other one was dealing with the North American section. Remember how this guy said in the book that he says the Great Spirit from the says, but that they also had a tradition that the time would come when the Indians would regain the gift of the Great Spirit from the white people, and with it their ancient power, when the white people's head would again be under the Indians' feet. That's the future. That is a future. So now we find the same thing right over here. The day when they were at last to issue forth into the world was coming soon. To issue forth into the world is to become a power or strength again, Mishpachah. To regain their place. Okay, let's continue on. That's right. Read.
But in the meantime, they could not allow visitors to cross over to them. They were willing to make an exception in the near future, however, on account of their need for education, for though they spoke Hebrew, they could not read or write it. Would Montesinos send them 12 bearded men to their teachers, their teachers?
That's a question.
He said he would. The four strangers returned to their canoe, paddled back across the river, and disappeared from view.
So this is another account, Mishpachah, of people who were there and documented what the people were able to do at the time. This is before the complete whitewashing of history, the complete removal and re-education of these people. If I have to give you a class on the wickedness that has been done to these people, it will take probably a week just to go through it. There's so much information of how they were mistreated. I mean, it's incredible. It's incredible. It's incredible. And this is before the diaspora from the west side of Africa came over here to the Americas, Mishpachah. Okay, let's continue on. Let's go to our next slide. Now, this is from the Jewish press, and they're asking a question about, is the American Indian descendants from the lost tribes of Israel? This is part 2 of it, and it was put out by Dr. Yitzchak Levine. Now, they're kind of like being sarcastic to some degree because they're presenting this information about these. Remember what I said in the disclaimer. Europeans have a tendency of saying one thing, documenting everything as being exact what it is, and then switching it up later on. So you can never figure out what's going on. They're always changing. 1 minute Pluto is a planet. When I was growing up, Pluto was a planet. Is that correct? And now Pluto is not a planet anymore. When you were not speaking to the mic?
When I was growing up, Pluto was a planet.
But it's not anymore, right?
But it wasn't. But for a while, they decided to reconsider it to be a dwarf planet. But then, more recently, they decided to reclassify it once again as a planet, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it's reclassified as a planet along with several other heavenly bodies. They decided to now make them as recognized planets, if I remember correctly.
These people, serpent tongue. That is correct. They speak with a forked tongue. Forked tongue. Let's take a look at this article. Go ahead and read for me, please. Let's make it bigger. All right.
Last month's column sketched the basis for the belief that the American Indian is descended from the 10 lost tribes. One of the foremost proponents of this theory was the Indian trader James Adair.
So you have an Indian trader. That's a man who learned the language, watched the culture, bring back information to the government, and document where the people are located, how they live their lives. This is James Adair. This is a nice, healthy book. This is the book right here. I'll hold it up close so you can see it. Okay. The history of the American Indian. I mean, you can pull it up on Google or on Amazon and get a copy for yourself. The History of the American Indians by James Adair. And it's just a whole lot of information in these books, okay? So let's go ahead and read. They call it a theory. Now, when you really think about it, a theory, like evolution is a theory, the theory of evolution. But people, they say a theory is like not really true. But people pay a lot of money to go to college to believe in a theory that is not true. And theory and evolution has been held as something that is real or true. But when it comes to the 10 tribes of Israel, the theory is not true. We don't want to put that in stone. It's not concrete. Let's read. Go ahead and read.
In 1775, he wrote The History of the Indians, arguably the most significant 18th century work on the southern Indians.
Southeastern
Indians. In which he presented 23 arguments that proved the North American Aborigines were descended from the 10 lost tribes.
Aborigines, the original fathers of the land. Origins. Which is father, origins. Okay, the original fathers of this territory. Let's go to our next slide. Okay. Read.
These are their division into tribes, the worship of Jehovah,
read.
Their notions of a theocracy.
That means that the Elohim is our sovereign. He's our king. Read.
Their belief in the administration of angels, their language and dialects, their manner of counting time, their prophets and high priests,
read.
Their festivals, fasts, and religious rites, their daily sacrifice, their ablutions and anointings,
washings and anointings. Go ahead.
Their laws of uncleanliness, their abstinence from unclean things,
Read.
Their marriage divorces and punishments of adultery. There's several punishments.
This should have been 13, but this is a PDF, so go ahead and read.
Their sites of refuge. Their purification.
No, they're cities of refuge.
They're cities of refuge.
This is all found in the Torah. Okay, read.
Their purifications and preparatory ceremonies. Their ornaments. Their manner of curing the sick, their burial of the dead, their mourning for the dead, their raising seed to a deceased brother.
That's raising seed for the deceased brother. We had a class on that too. Also, that's found in the Torah, Mishpachah. Read.
Their change of names adapted to their circumstances and times.
See that? Read.
Their own traditions, the account of English writers, and the testimonies given by Spaniards and other writers of the primitive inhabitants of Mexico and Peru.
Let's continue with this article. Let's see what it says.
Indian language and dialects. Many of those who contend for Jewish origin of the American Indian insist that evidence of this fact is found in the languages of the Indians, which appear clearly to have been derived from the Hebrew. This is the opinion expressed by Mr. Adair.
So they're saying this white Gentile has it's not fact, it's just an opinion. But before, back in the 1800s, this was a big time book. 1800s, I think it's the 1700s. This was a big time book. Now it's obsolete. It's just a theory. Can't trust these people. But anyway, it doesn't matter. We have the Torah. We have prophecy. Okay. Go ahead and read.
According to him, the languages of the Indians and the Hebrews both lack prepositions and are formed with prefixes and suffixes, something he claims is not common to other languages.
All right. Let's go to our next slide. Read.
Adair and others provide lists of words that are supposedly similar in some Indian languages to Hebrew words.
Read.
For example, Shilu in Indian is supposedly the same as Shiloh in Hebrew. The word for man in Indian is Ish or Ishi. Other similar words are given by Adair and others, but to believe that most of them are similar to Hebrew words would seem to require quite a stretch of the imagination.
See that? You see what they do? But when you go to college and you listen to evolution, that's not a stretch of the imagination. We have to imagine all this stuff billions of trillions of years ago. Let's continue on with the article. I just wanted you to see how the thinking is. These are the intellects of society. You know, these are the ones who claim to be the first world. Everybody else is third. The belief in one God. Read.
It is said that among all the Aboriginal tribes and nations of both North and South America, whatever may have been said by the Spaniards to the contrary, they acknowledge one and only one God. And this again is taken by the advocates of the Jewish origin of the American Indians as further proof that this people are.
So, you see, the Spanish and different people call the people worshiping all kinds of different gods, being savages, cannibals, and whatnot. But let me tell you a little bit about that real quick before we move on. One of the things that, and I think we can all relate to it in our day. In order for the police to beat down Hebrews in the streets of America, they first have to demonize you, regard you as a threat, as brutes, rapists. A woman goes into an elevator, a Hebrew walks into an elevator, she's going to cling onto her purse because she thinks that naturally that this person wants to rape and beat her and whatever the case may be. They have to demonize you so they can shoot you down with 20 bullets or 300 bullets. And this is what happened throughout the western side of this world. First thing that they had to do was put a label to the people. But isn't it funny that the Europeans, when they first came here to the Americas, they were dying out. They were the ones who were the cannibals. When you look at the Jamestown, it says that in Jamestown, the people were dying and they ate each other. They used to go back into the graves and dig up corpse and eat that flesh. Until the Indians, the so-called savages, came and gave them food, threw a little deer over the fence or something. The Indians didn't have their places barricaded with forts, big logs and stuff. It was the Europeans, because they are very afraid people. They're always afraid. That's why they always have to out-arm themselves. You have a little slingshot, they have to bring a tank, because they're very afraid. They're very scared people. To compensate for the fear that they have to do these types of things. And if it wasn't for the American Indians, the natives, they would have starved to death and died out. Huh? Why do you think they always need a guide to teach them the roots and how to hunt and plant the corn and how to do different things and to survive and fish and where to find good water, where to find peace and safety and whatever the case may be. And when they got a foothold, the French killed out one tribe of people and blame it upon another tribe and start these wars between. So the English would do the same thing. And then they'll sit back and watch the tribes fight among themselves and then say, you see, these people are savages. And then when the people find out and they decide to fight against the Europeans and wipe out their little ones and wipe out, it says, you see, we need to fight against these people. These people are savages. Brothers and sisters, you have to understand the art of war. This is strategy by the enemy. Okay, let's read on. Let's read some more. Descendants of Jews.
Are the descendants of the Jews.
Uh-huh.
A certain Dr. Boudinot, who was purported to be an expert on American Aborigines, says of the Indians that they were never known. Whatever mercenary Spaniards may have written to the contrary, to pay the least adoration to images or dead persons, to celestial luminaries, to evil spirits, or to any created beings whatever, in which Mr. Adair concurs, adding that none of the numerous tribes and nations from Hudson Bay to the Mississippi have ever been known to attempt the formation of any image of God.
See that? So if they find a totem pole, for example, they're going to say, well, you see, they're worshiping gods. But according to James Adair, who was getting furs and different things to trade so the Europeans can stay alive, skins and whatever the case may be, he's saying, no, these people weren't worshiping other gods and stuff, totem poles and whatever it is. When they say the Great Spirit, they're not talking about some strange devil or whatever the case may be. Anyway, let's continue on. Counting time.
The Indians count time after the manner of the Hebrews. They divide the year into spring, summer, autumn, and winter. They number their years from any of those 4 periods.
All right, let's go to our next slide.
But they have no name for a year.
They have what?
No name for a year.
What?
And they subdivide these and count the year by lunar months.
What?
Like the Israelites who counted by moons.
By what?
They begin a year at the first appearance of the first new moon of the vernal equinox, according to the ecclesiastical year of Moses.
Ecclesiastical year of Moses means according to the priesthood. Not like the Jewish Ashkenazim that start in the fall. Say Happy New Year at the Feast of Trumpets. Grab the other microphone. Yes, go ahead.
When it says the ecclesiastical year of Moses, remember Yah told Moses, this month shall be the beginning of months unto you. It shall be the first month of the year to you. That's what they're talking about here. Because that's what Yah told Moses.
Well, let's show you how the Jewish people like to twist things up. And even though, see, they're going to bring the information out, but they don't want people to be connected to them. Yeah, there are a lot of people out there that has all these Hebraic connections, but no, they're not really Hebrews. We'll convert them, but they're not really Hebrews. Okay, let's read on. The person
who wrote this seems to have been totally unaware of the fact that the Hebrew calendar is based upon complex calculations that take into account both solar and lunar phenomena.
It's not complex calculations. It's both solar and lunar. That is correct. But it's not complex. Because did the Indians have any piece of paper? No. A Gregorian priest to come out and put all kinds of scopes and whatever it is?
No, and they didn't have protractor either.
Okay, so Mishpachah wants to know what book I'm reading from. Let me do this real quick. This is the book right here. This is the book. All right. Okay, so let's go back. Let me share my screen again. Let's go back and continue on. See what happens here. Okay. All right, let's continue on. In conformity to.
In conformity to or after the manner of the Jews, the Indians of America have their prophets, high priests, and others of a religious order.
Uh-huh. All right, so let's make it a little bit smaller. Let's go to our next. As the Jews.
As the Jews had a sanctum sanctorum, holy of holies, so in general have all the Indian nations. There they deposit their consecrated vessels, none of the laity daring to approach that sacred place. Indian tradition says that their fathers were possessed of an extraordinary divine spirit, by which they foretold future things and controlled the common course of nature. And this power they transmitted to their offspring, provided they obeyed the sacred laws annexed pertaining thereto.
Oh, our laws is what breaks or makes us.
That's right.
If we disobey the Most High, we are broken. If we obey the Most High, we are healed and we have power again.
Amen.
Don't you understand that the same way you have missionary outposts at the reservations, you have church at the ghettos, a church at every corner? Their job is to suppress you from returning back to the laws, statutes, and commandments of the Most High, because the power is found within our scrolls. You read the book of Judith.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. That's exactly what it says.
Let's go there.
In the book of Judith.
And let's read the book of Judith, and we'll see what it says. Let me pull it up, Mishpachah. And you'll see, Mishpachah, that oops. Book of Judith, chapter 5 and verses 18. There's another spot too we can go to. Let me pull it up. So they do a search. They know all about Israelites. They know us better than we know ourselves. They know us better than we know ourselves. We just, you know, they give us a label and they say, you're all a bunch of so-and-so and you're all of this and that. And we say, okay, we accept it. Yeah, you're right. Let me see if there's another place. Okay, so yeah, that's the one. 18 to 21. Judith chapter 5, verses 18 to 21. Now let's read from 17. So this is an advisor to one of these generals or captains or something, who was given the power to go out and conquer these Hebrews. And this is what was said, verses 17.
It says, and whilst they sin not before their Elohim, they prospered, because Yah that hateth iniquity was with them. But when they departed from the way which he appointed them, they were destroyed in many battles very sore, and were led captives into the land that was not theirs. And the temple of their Elohim was cast to the ground, and their cities were taken by the enemies. But now they are returned to their Elohim, and are come up from the places where they were scattered, and have possessed Jerusalem where their sanctuary is, and are seated in the hill country, for it was desolate. Now therefore, my Lord and Governor, if there be any error in this people.
Notice what it says. If there be any error in these people, go ahead.
And they sin against their Elohim. Let us consider that this shall be their ruin, and let us go up, and we shall overcome them.
Read.
But if there be no iniquity in their nation, let my Lord now pass by, lest their Elohim defend them, and their Elohim be for them, and we become a reproach before the world.
You see, before all the world.
Before all the world.
So the commandments, you find that these people have researched us to understand who we are, what our kryptonite is, and start to put out information. Hey, listen, if these people, let's go to chapter 11 of the same book. And it's also repeated twice. The Most High always have things repeated twice and even 3 times. So if we miss it one place, we'll pick it up another place. Let's go to verses 9. 11 and verses 9.
Verse 9. Now, as concerning the matter which Archior did speak in thy council, we have heard his words. For the men of Bethulia saved him, and he declared unto them all that he had spoken unto thee. Therefore, O Lord and Governor, reject not his word.
Respect not his word or reject?
Reject not his word.
Okay, reject not his word.
But lay it up in thine heart, for it is true. For our nation shall not be punished, neither can the sword prevail against them, except they sin against their Elohim.
So we have to sin against our king. Okay? This is the only way that they can have power over us. So that's all we need from that. And you see, the people knows, and that's why it says here, provided they obeyed the sacred laws annexed pertaining thereto. Okay? Now, let's read on some more. William Penn. This is the same person that the state is called after, Pennsylvania. Okay? And he was a proponent. Let me go back. He was a proponent pushing back in those days that these Indians were actually Hebrews. This is back in he was back in 1600s to 1700s, and he did acknowledge that these were Hebrews, and this is what he said. Go ahead and read. Penn wrote
the following to a friend in England. I found them, the Indians of the eastern shore of North America, with like countenances with the Hebrew race.
Like countenance with the Hebrew race. Now the Indians were not pale. Okay, read on.
And the children of so lively a resemblance to them that a man would think himself in Duke's Place or Berry Street in London, when he sees them.
So wait a minute. Are we going to say, well, the great statesman William Penn, who was the founding father of the state of Pennsylvania, that he was off in his mindset? We can believe that this man was a statesman, well honored by the United States of America. Good guy. We can look at all his other works and accept that. But his acknowledgement of these people as being Hebrews, no. That's just a theory. He was drinking some brown liquor that day. Let's continue on. Elijah Haynes.
Elijah Haynes, the author of The American Indian, points out here, without the least previous idea of those natives being Israelites, that shrewd man was struck with their perfect resemblance of them, and with other things. He speaks of their dress and trinkets as notable like those of ancient Israel. Mr. Penn further adds that the worship of this people consists in 2 parts: sacrifices and cantos, songs.
See that? He realized that the people had sacrifices and they also had songs, Mishpachah. Let's move on. So, hey, these are not my words. These are not your words. This is just what history is saying, right? Let's go and see what else Mr. Penn penned. Read.
The first is with their first fruits.
Oh, so they have a first fruits. Read.
And the first buck they kill goes to the fire.
Read.
And that all who go to this feast must take a piece of money, which is made of the bone of a fish. None shall appear before me empty. A reference to Shemos 34:20.
That's Exodus 34. Okay, read on. Widespread belief.
The belief that the Aborigine peoples living in the New World were descendants of the lost tribes was widely accepted during the 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries.
It was narrowly accepted. Does it say that? Or it says widely accepted. What does widely accepted mean? That if you had to debate those scholars, you would lose. That's what it means. So what happened? They're saying, they're saying, well, we have to discount what was recorded before. If that be the case, let us go down to every university and burn all the books that they're forcing us to read, because that's garbage. Because the university is built upon these prominent men. Isn't that correct? These are supposed to be the founding fathers of this country.
Yep.
And if the founding fathers has a bunch of malarkey, then everything else is malarkey afterwards. Let's read on.
Indeed, the prominent Jewish leader Mordecai Emanuel Noah, 1785-1851, was convinced of this.
So a prominent Jewish leader, Mordecai, believed that these Indians were Hebrews. Read on.
On February 14th, 1837, he, Noah, delivered under the auspices of the Mercantile Library Association a lecture on Jewish antiquities or the Lost 10 Tribes.
Let's see what Marty has to say. Read.
Like Protestant evangelicals, he praised Indians as virtuous and noble, quoting published research.
Wait a minute. Virtuous and not lazy, but virtuous and noble, not savages? Wait a minute. Read.
Quoting published research, he linked the red men to numerous aspects of Jewish ritual and custom.
So remember, he's a prominent Jewish person, right? Read.
He also adduced many similarities between Indian languages and Hebrew.
So if he's a Hebrew scholar, he should know very well what they're saying, right? Read.
In Noah's formulation than in those of his predecessors.
The numerous
comparisons, however, were no more convincing in Noah's formulation than in those of his predecessors.
Now, of course, the news article is going to say everything is debunked, so go ahead and read what they're saying. I'm sorry, hold on. What happened here? Okay, let's go down just a little bit. Let's see. Okay, go ahead and read. Sorry.
Today, of course, this belief is not accepted by most people and certainly not by Orthodox Jews.
Oh, Ashkenazim says no.
It is, however, a fundamental tenet of Mormonism.
Mormonism. So now they're saying the morons, that's the belief from the morons, and so therefore we can just throw that out. Well, it's interesting when you read that the Mormons themselves that travel to the Midwest and Utah and whatever the case may be, they accounted that these people, these Indians, were Hebrew, but they also have a teaching that the Hebrews were cursed by the Most High and became dark-skinned. But the Mormons have white skin because they're pure, righteous, like the angels. Angels are pure because they're white. Hence, we have angels' food cake and devil's food cake, right? When you eat chocolate cake, it's sinful. It's sinful. It's too rich. It's rich. But the other one is not sinful. What's the opposite of rich? Think about that.
Poor.
Read on.
poor because white stuff has no substance in it. It's poor.
Let's read on. Let's read on.
Conservative.
Simon G. Southerton's book.
Simon G. Southerton's book, Losing a Lost Tribe, contains a thorough study of the pre-migration origin of Native Americans based on DNA genetic markers.
So now they're trying to say, well, these people are not connected to Hebrew. But let's take a look. His results.
His results show that these peoples are of Siberian and Polynesian.
All these people are Siberians. Read.
If the American Indians were of Hebrew descent, their DNA would correlate with Middle Eastern genetic markers, which it does not.
So the Middle Eastern genetic markers that they have put together is loaded with a lot of Roman and Greek bloodlines and stuff like that. So if it doesn't match that, it's not true. All right, let's continue.
Thus, DNA testing contradicts the doctrine that the Aborigine peoples living here when the New World was discovered were descended from the 10 lost tribes.
And you know what's interesting? That they said that they found all these fossils of these bones, of these fish that were billions of years old and whatnot. And every so often they catch a fish off of Madagascar or one of those places that is the same exact fish that is in those stones. So if they take those bones, I'm sure they're going to say, well, you know what they call them now? They call them living fossils. So they have, because they got caught, basically. They got caught with their pants down. Now they're calling these so-called fish that they found that is the same bones like those in the stones. They say, well, they're living fossils. Mishpachah, these people are crazy. Anyway, let's move on to our other slides and stuff. Let's look at some Hebrew artifacts that are found in the Americas. But again, I put the question because the scholars do say we can't trust this information. We got to throw it out. Okay, we got to throw these things out. So let's move ahead and see some things here. Oops. Okay. So some time ago, Mishpachah, there's a book published, publications of the American Jewish Historical Society, number 5, back in 1917, page 81 to 85. They found phylacteries at Pittsfield, Massachusetts. Okay. Phylacteries. Anyone knows what phylacteries? What? On your garments. That's right.
Garments of the priest.
The stuff on the garments of Hebrews. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's read this. Go ahead and read.
Captain Joseph Merrick settled in Pittsfield about 1800, having removed from Westfield, and became the innkeeper of its chief hostelry. He owned a farm and a garden a little out of the center of the village at the south end of Onata Lake, on which was Indian Hill, more recently called Fort Hill.
So this was an Indian hill, or a place where the Indians lived. Read.
On Indian Hill had been the old fort established in 1754 for the protection of the early settlers from the French and Indians. While plowing in the summer of 1815.
While he was plowing, while he was in his garden digging up the soil,
Captain Merrick turned up with his plow what proved to be a phylactery.
So he found a phylactery, a Hebrew piece, buried in the ground. Okay, read.
Elkanah Watson, one of Pittsfield's distinguished pioneers.
A distinguished pioneer means that he cannot tell a lie. Read.
Gives the following contemporary of the discovery.
Okay, so now he's gonna give a record of the discovery to Hugh Williamson. Let me go down just a little bit more. All right, it says, "Dear sir, This is Pittsfield, November 10th, 1815. Okay, so our people were in chains. All right, so we didn't write this stuff. Oops, we didn't write this stuff. Read.
In conformity with your request to ascertain all the facts in relation to the interesting discovery of a Jewish phylactery in this village, on June 1st, I reply. It was plowed up in the yard of Mr. Joseph Merrick, a respectable inhabitant who resides on the borders of the village.
Take your time, read.
In the midst of rubbish, and lying some inches below the surface.
Read.
Immediately on hearing the rumor of the discovery, I repaired to the home of Mr. Merrick, where I found several clergymen.
He found churchmen
whose curiosity was greatly excited by the strange incident.
The church people were excited, right? Read.
And who believed with me that the article must have found its way into the recent wilderness by the agency of some of the descendants of Israel.
Take your time, read it again. By the who?
By the agency of some of the descendants of Israel.
So they looked at this thing and it says, listen, man, this is not a church stuff. This is Hebrew stuff we're looking at. Now, these clergymen had to go to some seminary school and learn some Hebrew and study all, because they're the ones who keep the scrolls and keep all the information, not we. We are in the field picking cotton, digging cabbages, and taking care of their babies. That's us, right? These are the ones who give the account that what they found was from the descendants of Israel. Okay? That's all we need from that. Let me see if there's anything else I want to read. No, read some more. Read some more.
Having previously read with intense interest on the subject and being impressed with the belief that the Indians of America were descended from the lost tribes of Israel, and that they had been directed by the same almighty hand which had brought them out of the land of Egypt to continue their journeyings in a northeastern course, probably for many ages, and finally to reach this continent at Bering's Strait. Yet retaining some knowledge of the arts and sciences, and always adhering to the rites of the Jewish religion.
So that's all we need. So they're saying that, they go back to their school upbringing, and all they know is the Bering Straits. That's all they know. Everything is Bering Straits, Bering Straits, Bering Straits. In other words, there's no way that these people can go on a ship, a boat, and travel. They don't have that ability. But they're not smart enough to navigate through the seas, but at least they retain some knowledge. Do you see what it says here? They retain some knowledge of what? The arts and sciences. How could you retain knowledge of arts and sciences on dry ground, but you don't have the science to travel or navigate on the ocean?
Water. Yeah, exactly.
Does that make any sense to you?
No, it does not.
You see what I'm talking about? These people are just... Anyway, let's move on to some other articles. Let's see, Indians. Okay, so let's go here. And then we'll come back to some of these other articles and stuff, these other artifacts. We'll come back to the artifacts shortly. All right, Indian slaves on cargo ships. So now we have some Hebrews amongst us who says there are no Indians who have went to different parts of the world and whatnot. And I can give you other information, but I'm just going to give you a little taste of it. Okay. Because the same way that Hebrews were taken from the plantation and brought to colonize places in Africa is the same way that American Indians, so-called American Indians, were taken and brought to other places. When you go to the accounts of history, you'll see they were taken to Spain and they were taken to other places of the earth. They were taken over to Hawaii. They were taken over to just different locations, Mishpaka. We're going to cover that right now, the Caribbean islands, okay? So let's take a look. This, just for the record, this is taken directly from the National Park Service, the United States National Park Service, Department of the Interior. This is their link right here. You can check it out for yourself. All right, let's see what they have to say. Let's go ahead and read. Let me make it a little bit bigger so we all can see. Go ahead and read.
Many of these early slaves were American Indians.
Many of the what?
Early slaves.
Oh, okay. So the American Indians were slaves. Read.
Mostly Algonquin speakers of coastal Virginia and North Carolina. By the 1680s, English settlers routinely kidnapped Native American women and children in the coastal plains of North Carolina and Virginia. This Native American slave trade involved a number of colonies, including Virginia, Carolina, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Jamaica, Barbados, St. Kitts, and Nevis.
So, Mishpaka, isn't that the Caribbean?
Yep.
Huh?
Yep.
Okay, so the slave trade was in all these colonies, including Jamaica, Barbados, St. Kitts, and Nevis. This is in the 1600s. By the time our people got there too, guess what? We intermarried with one another. We're going to see that too. Okay, let's continue.
So many Indian slaves were traded to Pennsylvania that a law was passed in 1705 forbidding the importation of Carolina Indian slaves. This was done in part because many of the slaves were Tuscarora, who were aligned militarily with the Iroquois Confederacy, which threatened to intervene to stop the trade.
You see that? The Iroquois wanted to stop the slave trade. And as a matter of fact, you'll hear some Hebrews saying, well, Indians had blacks as slaves. If you dig a little deeper, you'll find that the reason why a lot of them had some of our people as slaves were they were trying to buy back our people and bring them back under their care and protection. Okay? So you have to look at things with balance. With balance, Mishpaka. Balance. Let's move on to our next slide. Right here. Let's go up just a little bit more.
From 1680 to 1715, the English sold thousands of Indians into slavery, some as far away as the Caribbean.
So if you go into the Caribbean, are you taking American Airlines? Are you taking American Airlines? Delta? Southwest? No, Mishpaka. Slave ships.
Yep.
Slave ships, cargo ships, okay? Read on.
Indian slavery, however, had many problems, none the least of which were Indian attacks. By 1720, most colonies in North America had abandoned it for African slavery. In 1670,
and the reason for that too, Mishpaka, is because the Europeans introduced a lot of diseases to the people, but they still needed people to do the work. The problem that they had with the Indians was that the Indians knew the land too well. They knew it too well. So bring people from another place to a territory that they had no knowledge. They don't know the topography at all. Okay, it makes it difficult, but we still need them to work because we can't work. We can't work, stay in the hot sun and pull cotton all day. We can't do it. Read on.
Virginia, in 1670, Virginia passed a law defining slavery as a lifelong inheritable racial status.
See that? Racial status. Brown skin, you're a slave. Read.
After the passage of this law, many black Indians found themselves classified as black and forced into slavery.
No, they were good friends. Good, loving friends. Let's say happy Thanksgiving. Let's continue on. In the fields.
In the fields and homes of colonial plantations, mutually enslaved African Americans and American Indians forged their first intimate relations. In spite of a later tendency in the southern colonies to differentiate the African slave from the Indian, chattel slavery was built on a pre-existing system of Indian slavery.
See? The same slavery that had our people enslaved was built on what happened to our people before we got here on this side of the world, okay? Even though
the arrival of Africans in 1619 began to change the face of slavery in North America from Tawny Indian to Blackmoor Indian. Indian slaves were exported throughout the Caribbean.
Indian slaves
were exported throughout the Caribbean, often in trade for Africans.
See that? They traded one for the other. Traded it out, one for the other. Okay, go ahead and read.
As the 18th century dawned, the slave trade in the American Indians was so serious that it eclipsed the trade for furs and skins.
You see that?
And had become the primary source of commerce between the English and the South Carolina colonials.
So the British Europeans were so deep in trading American Indians that they did more trade in that than furs and skins. You see what's going on here? This is from the United States Department of Interior. That's their words. Let's read on.
During this transitional period, Africans and American Indians shared the common experience of enslavement. They worked together.
They fought each other.
They worked together.
They hated each other.
Together in communal quarters, produced collective recipes for food, shared herbal remedies, myths and legends, in the end they intermarried. Africans had a disproportionate numbers of males in their population, while Native American women and children were disproportionately enslaved.
See that?
American Indian males were shipped to the Caribbean, died in wars or of European diseases.
Oh yeah, this is the loving people who now control every single part of world history. So now everything that they say is truth. Whatever drools off their lips is truth. And whatever we say is a bunch of lies. Read on.
As traditional societies in the Southeast were primarily matrilineal, African males who married American Indian women often became members of the wife's clan and of her nation. Francis Lejow described a prophetic Christianity that developed in the African American community in the Carolina colony. Because of their close association with American Indians through work and marriage.
Go up a little bit more. Read.
In these areas of the South, the
tell you what, you can stop there. Let's skip on this a little bit. Read the 1740 slave codes. Let's read that.
The 1740 slave codes of South Carolina served to blur the distinction between African American Indian and the children of their intermarriage.
Now, the 1740 code. This, let me slow down. Whenever we see these so-called codes, all it is just the Europeans doing what they do best. Change. They're always changing like a snake, back and forth, back and forth. They say we're friends, and then they switch it around and do something else. Yeah, we'll never do this to you, but then they switch it around and do something else. So when you see the word blur, when something is blurred, you can't really make a distinction. It's not clear. You can't tell. So it's left to interpretation. Someone has to interpret. So if you go over on this side, you can get killed. If you go on this side, you might be saved. You don't even know where to turn with these laws. Let's see what the code said. All Negroes
and Indians, free Indians in enmity with this government, and Negroes, mulattoes, and mustezoses.
That's the classification that these Europeans create. Read.
Who are now free, accepted, mulattoes and mustasinos, who are now or shall hereafter be in this province, and all their issue and offspring.
That's their children.
Shall be, and they are hereby declared to be, and remain hereafter absolute slaves.
So both the Negroes and the Indians, according to the codes, they says as long as you bring forth any children, you are declared absolute slaves. Y'all see that? So don't tell me that we all didn't share the same curse of Deuteronomy 28. Being shipped from one place to the other, slavery, ghettos, poison, you name it, beat down, names changed, all kinds of crazy stuff. Some of our people would have never survived if it wasn't for the so-called Indians who give us sanctuary and try to keep the fire burning over here. Let's continue on. Even so,
the next century would see the development of independent mixed blood communities. The most notable those that participated in the African Seminole Indian Wars in Florida.
Read.
Most of the early records of the missionaries note that enslaved African American living in American Indian communities were among their first converts to Christianity.
All right, that's all we need from that. You see, first converts. Now, how are you going to convert somebody that's against you for your wickedness? When they put those words, converts, it makes it sound like you knock on the doors. I would like to be baptized. I'd like to be baptized. I believe, and I want to be baptized and become a Christian. No. Let's move on to our other slides. Don't let them fool you, Mishpaka. These people are really, really slick. So this is from the National Park Service, and you got additional links. You can look at that right here. I got two, okay? And when you read the stuff, you can see the criminal activity of the so-called people who held on to our scrolls, okay? They sing hallelujah on one side while they have a gun on the other side. Okay. All right, let's move on. Let's move on. We can get it to switch. This is a picture of a woman being an American Chihuahua, looks like. That's close to Mexico. This is from the University of Texas Press. They're showing you that they're weighing this woman, I believe, for slavery. Check her weight and whatnot. You see two guys on the side, two Mexican, and the woman is here with her body's exposed. Let's continue on. All right, let's look at a few artifacts that was found, because what they like to do is show us these information and then pull it back and says, no, this is just forgeries and fakes and whatnot, okay? So this is found in New Mexico. It's called a Decalogue stone, Los Lunas, New Mexico. And on this stone, you find Paleo-Hebrew right here. Y'all can see that, Paleo-Hebrew on the stone. Now, recently, the stone doesn't look like this anymore. People have vandalized this stone, but this is the 10 Commandments that was found on this stone. It's a huge stone, I think it's like 8 tons or something. But let's take a look. The Los Lunas Decalogue stone is a large boulder on the side of a hidden mountain near Los Lunas, New Mexico, about 35 miles south of Albuquerque, that bears a very regular inscription carved into a flat panel. The stone is also known as the Los Lunas Mystery Stone, because they don't know the history behind it, or Commandment Rock. The inscription is interpreted to be an abridged version of the Decalogue or Ten Commandments in a form of Paleo-Hebrew. Okay, they found the name Yahuwah on there and so forth. The stone is controversial in that some claim the inscription is pre-Columbian and therefore prove early Shemitic contact with the Americas. Okay, let's move on. So they talk about these different theories. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but they found the stone and they said it was authentic. And then these scholars go back and forth saying, well, no, that's not authentic. It was a hoax. Okay, it's somebody put something on there. It's not really true. Somebody carved it up. All right, so let's continue on. Oh, the stone weighs over 80 tons. Because the stone's weight is over 80 tons, it was never moved to a museum or laboratory for study and safekeeping. Many visitors have cleaned the stone inscriptions over the years, likely destroying any possibility for scientific analysis of the inscription's patina. Nevertheless, comparing it to a modern inscription nearby, geologist George E. Morehouse, a colleague of Barry Fell, estimated that the inscription could be between 500 and 2,000 years old. So again, we find we're at the mercies of the Europeans to tell us whether something is true or false. If they say it's true, let's drink that water. If it's false, we can't debate it. Okay, because they have the monopoly on truth. Only truth can come out from their lips. You and I will never have the truth. Okay, now to see it, if you go to New Mexico, you got to pay $35 to get a permit to go see it. Okay, and make merchandise. Well, it's a way to protect it also. All right. So they put these fences up that, anyway, linguist Cyrus Gordon has proposed that this stone is a Samaritan mezuzah. Now that's interesting. Who lived in the place we call Samaria during the time of the Old Testament?
The Northern Kingdom.
The who?
The Northern Kingdom.
The Northern Kingdom, or the 10 tribes of Israel.
Ephraim.
Oh, Ephraim. That's correct. So it sounds like they know what they're talking about. They know when by looking at it, it says a mezuzah. A mezuzah is where you have the commandments or the scriptures, and before you enter your gates, you touch it as a reminder, as a gatekeeper. Okay. The familiar Jewish mezuzah is a tiny scroll placed in a small container mounted by the entrance to a house. The ancient Samaritan mezuzah, on the other hand, was commonly a large stone slab placed by the gateway to a property or what? Or a synagogue, and bearing an abridged version of the Decalogue. All right. So again, the researchers, we could only take what they're saying, and that's it. Now here's another artifact, and I'm gonna try to be quick. We don't have too much to go again. Here's an artifact. It's called the Bat Creek inscription. So they found this thing over in Michigan somewhere, Cherokee country, and it says, "Ooh, this thing is looks like it's Hebrew." Okay, Paleo-Hebrew. When they check it out, they said it looks like it's Hebrew. But then they said later on, no, somebody who was a Mason chiseled that thing on there because, let me go back. This is holiness unto Yahuwah in Paleo-Hebrew. So they said a Mason chiseled this thing out because we looked up a Masonic book Okay, they claim that this thing is a fake, and when you read the articles, it says that. let me go ahead and read this. It says while in 2014, the Smithsonian Department of Anthropology issued the following statement concerning the stone. While recognizing that a diversity of opinion, once again, opinion, continues to circulate around the authenticity of the Bat Creek stone. Why don't you read for me? Since my mouth is all dried up. Read for me.
The authenticity of the Bat Creek stone, the curators in the Department of Anthropology at the National Museum of Natural History, Smithsonian Institution, believe that the inscriptions on the artifact are forgeries, and that the artifact is a fake.
So you see, there you go. It's a fake, right? This opinion
is widely shared by other professional archaeologists, as represented in the article by Robert Mainfort and Mary Quaz.
All right, let's leave this. Let's go to our next slide. I just want to touch on that just a little bit because here's the reason why they said it's a fraud. Because this, on the bottom here, is page number 134 of a Masonic book. And they said it was taken, the inscription was taken from the Masonic book and chiseled on a stone. So therefore, we declare it's a forgery. This right here? Yeah. Speaking to the mic.
I'm saying the letters on the book is not the same letters that are written on the stone.
This is missing.
It's missing. And
it's not here. See?
Exactly.
It's missing. Okay. And then they have these theories about, well, the guy, added a little something else in there or left something out. This is what they do, Mishpachah, to kind of bamboozle you. Here's another one, the Newark Holy Stones. Can you read this for me?
The Newark Holy Stones.
Yeah.
The Newark Holy Stones refer to a set of artifacts allegedly discovered by David Wyrick in 1860 within a cluster of ancient Indian burial mounds near Newark, Ohio. The set consists of the keystone, a stone bowl, and the Decalogue with its sandstone box. They can be viewed at the Johnson Humrick House Museum in Coscon, Ohio.
All right, you can stop there. So if you look around the stone, you can see Paleo-Hebrew all around it, Mishpachah, Hebrew. Okay, and that's supposed to be saying Moses with the commandments right over here. He has a garment, but they're gonna say, well, his garment is not ancient Hebrew, as if they have a time machine to go back in the past to let us know specifically what it's supposed to look like. Okay. Read this part for me. Let's blow it up. The inscription.
The inscription begins on the front at the top of an arch above the figure of a bearded man who is wearing a turban.
He's wearing a what?
Turban.
What is a turban? A head covering. Ancient Hebrews had what?
Head covering.
Ah, interesting. Read.
And appears to be holding a tablet. It runs down the left side, continues around all sides, and makes its way back to the front of the right side to where it began. This pattern indicates that the inscription was meant to be read repetitively. Right above the figure of the man's head, right above the figure of the man is a separate inscription which translates to Moses.
Right up here. Translates to Moshe. Okay. Go ahead.
This rock was carved with a unique form of Hebrew, which gave the appearance of ancient post-exilic square Hebrew letters that later was shown to be derived from the modern Hebrew alphabet.
Post-exilic, the post or those after the exile, okay? All right, let's move on. We'll try to wrap it up. The keystone. This is the keystone. It says Kadosh Kedoshim, Holy of Holies on it. Okay, on the one part. This is Melech Eretz, King of the earth, on one side of it. The other side, Torah Yehovah, the law of Elohim, right here on the other side. Y'all can see it. Devar Yehovah, the word, Devar, the word of Elohim on the stone. Okay? So now we have, after all of that, we have these people saying, well, these are forgeries and these are fakes. But my question is, why would they go to such a limb to prove that these are so-called forgeries? Or why would someone go out to make forgeries? Let's put it that way. Why would someone want to take their time to carve up a bunch of stones, to chisel things in rocks, to give the idea that the American Indians, the same people that they hate and they want the land, to make them believe that these are the people of the book? Does that make any sense to you? You want the people's land. The worst thing you can do is to prove that these are God's people that you're killing, that you're stealing from, that you're raping and you're robbing, that you're enslaving in captivity. You understand this? This makes no sense. Unless someone was trying to push that to stop people from robbing, raping, and doing these things. But that makes no sense. And these are on all different locations. One is in New Mexico, one is in Ohio, one is in Michigan. They're all different places. In Tennessee. Then in Puerto Rico, they found these Taino artifacts with Hebrew on it. Far away. Anyway, we're at the mercies of those who control the earth. Now look at this. This is a Mayan pottery. So you have the Europeans who say, well, the Indians came on the Bering Straits. Okay. But according to the history with the Mayans, when you look at the pottery, it shows that there was a dark-skinned people that were coming over to the Americas and doing trades and whatnot. That means that they didn't come over the Bering Straits. They used ships to travel to come over to South America and whatnot. You have the Olmec civilization with these features, as you can see, these huge heads, okay, with these thick lips right over here. And the Olmec civilization, so-called civilization, was over in the area of Central America, Gulf of Mexico. You can see locations over here. Central America. All right. Look at the features of these people. So they can't explain how these people came over and settled in Central America. What they do now is cover it up and says, well, if you see any people that look dark-skinned and whatnot, looking a little bit different from the rest of the population, these were just leftovers from slavery. These were not the original people, or these people were never here, and such like. These were just, you know, leftovers from slavery. So we again start to believe that what they're saying is true. Now, I want to play a video because this is good stuff. I'm going to play a quick video. This is called Black in Latin America. This gentleman by the name of Dr. Henry Louis Gates put out a documentary called Black in Latin America. And in his documentary, there is an embarrassing situation where a lot of Mexicans don't want people to know that their ancestors were actually black peoples, okay? They call it a black grandmother in the closet. So let me go ahead and play this video. Let me get it set up for the Mishpacha to see. And let's go here and make it bigger. All right, Mishpacha, let's roll it back.
Hide in plain sight.
They mix from the beginning. You cannot see them, but it's there.
Many people remain unaware of their African ancestry.
I asked my grandpa, why you never told me we are black?
But today, those African roots are becoming more visible.
Blacks are here now, and they are demanding that their rights be recognized.
Mexico and Peru, the black grandma in the closet, black in Latin America.
When you think of Mexico, what comes to mind? Endless sunshine, white sandy beaches, the Mayan and Aztec ruins. And Peru? Machu Picchu, the great Inca people, 5,000 varieties of potato. How many of us realize that far more slaves came to Mexico and Peru together than came to the United States in the entire history of the slave trade? I've come here to search for the lost history of black people in Mexico and Peru. The charming town of Tlacotalpan was founded by the Spanish in the 16th century, but it boomed in the 18th century when it became a major trading center for sugar, cotton, cattle, and horses, all commodities produced by slaves, Indians, and mestizos. Today, Tlacotalpan is known for its fandangos, music and dance that combine Spanish, indigenous, and African traditions. Fandangos are a fitting metaphor for the African roots of Mexican culture. The fandango. Those girls are great. Now, the boys dance or just girls?
Well, they always say that the first hour for it, like, watch the girls. Check if you want to dance with one of them later.
Rafael Figueroa, an ethnomusicologist, grew up here. He's an expert on this music, which he's heard since childhood.
Fandango, it's a really mix of Hispanic and African mainly, even though it's Hispanic instruments. So they are played in a really percussive way, and they are playing, against each other with the result of a big polyrhythm. Polyrhythm.
That's African.
Yes. I've seen fandangos ending around 6 or 7
a.m.
next afternoon.
I love this town. What could be more Mexican than La Bamba? I remember singing the chorus along with Richie Valens on the radio, but I didn't know that the song was sung here as early as 1683 by Angolan and Congolese slaves. Like the fancy footwork called zapateo, La Bamba is another example of Mexican culture's complex African origins, now blended into a rich, brown, ethnic mix. Hey, bravo, bravo! But since so many black slaves came to Mexico, why doesn't anyone around here look especially black?
They mix from the beginning. That's why you cannot, see them, but it's there.
So the blackness is diluted.
Yes, A lot of African elements are still present. We are darker than the rest of the Republic. Also, the way of talking, we have a specific accent.
Really?
Yeah.
Can you do it for me?
If you say helado, ice cream, here you would you drop the D, so it's helado. Or you drop the final S of some words. But it's really common among the people from African origin.
I've noticed some people will say buenos dias instead of buenos dias. I thought, what's wrong with you? You know? About an hour and a half from the Fandango's festive atmosphere sits the somber port of Veracruz, one of the main points of entry of Latin American slavery. Starting in 1535, virtually all of the commodities arriving in Mexico, including African slaves, were unloaded here.
It was called the Key of New Spain, the port of San Juan de Ulúa.
Judith Hernandez studies the archaeology of Veracruz, and Sagrario Cruz Carretero is a professor of anthropology at the University of Veracruz. Both are helping me imagine the arrival of hundreds of thousands of slaves through this very port. How long did it take to get to Veracruz from the ports in Africa?
Some records mention 2 months.
That's a long time to be in a steam bath.
Right. And I found 20% of the load died.
And in the 16th and early 17th centuries, 1 out of every 2 slaves bound for the Americas disembarked in Mexico. In fact, in the year 1553, Viceroy Luis Velasco asked King Charles of Spain to curtail the trade, fearing an uprising, and with good reason. Until 1650, the number of blacks and mulattoes was roughly equal to the number of white people living here.
These are rings to which they tie their ships.
They're heavy.
The port didn't have a pier or docks. The ships arrived directly here.
What would happen when the slaves arrived? They would be checked medically?
There were paid surgeons to review the blacks. And the checkup consisted of licking the beard.
They lick there? That sounds nasty. Why?
The sweat conserved salt, so if it was salty, that meant they had good blood pressure.
How much did the slaves cost?
From 150 pesos to 400.
Oh.
Let me compare.
Okay.
A house costs 400 pesos.
Oh, wow. So a slave in a house. That's a lot.
It was a luxury. This
is what the slaves would have seen first, after surviving the treacherous Middle Passage. Here they encountered a new country, a new language, and a new life as someone else's property.
These walls are covered with African blood because they were forced to construct this gorgeous building after the indigenous population decreased because illness. And they were forced to dive into the ocean and get these stones because they are made of coral.
I see, coral,
yes, yes, it's coral. And many of them died in this process. It's a history of death and a history of invisibility.
So this is the fingerprint of Black history in Mexico.
Right.
It's right here.
Right, definitely.
Death and invisibility. Professor Sagrario Cruz has invited me to lunch, promising me 2 significant clues to help me solve the mystery of Mexico's missing Black population.
This is my family. Well, I show some pictures to show you. And this is a very old picture, and this is my grandpa with his sons.
The banditos.
Yes. And this is the wedding of my parents.
Oh, look how pretty your mom is.
But he's a dark man, and he's right.
So your family's part Black?
It's part Black. And it's something that was omitted until I was 19 years old.
How did you find out that you were part Black?
Because I traveled to Cuba. And when I arrived there, they started talking about the African heritage and the culture. I suddenly realized my family was Black because look like my grandpa, look like my father.
Yeah, no, they definitely look like.
And when I started tasting the food, I said, oh my God, it's the food my grandma prepares at home. Huh. I recommend you to taste the mogo mogo.
That sounds African.
Yes, sounds African. Mm-hmm. And we have the same recipe in Puerto Rico. It's fufu.
In Ghana, fufu.
Right.
Fufu is like having a bowling ball in your belly.
Yes, yes. And in Cuba, it's called mofongo. And here we have fried yuca.
I love fried yuca. It's like a big French fry. But
right. This was originally prepared by slaves because they needed carbohydrates.
Yeah, they had to work all day in the sun.
Right.
This is some good food. How did it make you feel suddenly to discover you're black?
Weird. It was like if you will discover that you are adopted.
When you came back and told your family, did they tell you you went loco up there, drinking too much rum?
I asked my grandpa, why you never told me we are black? And he held my hand and told me, sweetie, we are not black, we are morenos.
Oh, moreno.
Of course, he was aware that he was a black man, but he rejected that identity.
That's interesting.
And I think this happens in most families, that you hide the black grandma in the closet.
The black grandma in the closet.
Did y'all hear that?
Yeah.
Did y'all hear that?
In America, traditionally, if you had one drop of black blood, you were black. If the one drop rule were applied in Mexico, all of these people would be black.
Okay, we're gonna stop it here. This thing. So you all see how the sister went over to Cuba and found the same foods, found the same culture. Everything is the same, which is the same in Puerto Rico. Same stuff. Now, when you see these people, you're gonna say, "Oh, that's just a Mexican. Oh, that's such and such," but we don't know what happened historically and what has been hidden, purposely hidden, Mishpaka. It goes on into Peru. You can check it out, the full thing, but I just wanted to give you a little taste to see the hidden history. Families had a way of trying to cover because being dark-skinned is associated with being the lowest of the low. Nobody wants to identify with that. So if your hair is a certain way, your looks is more on the other side, we're gonna hold on to that. We're gonna divorce ourselves from everything else. Notice that they call themselves moreno, which is no different from black, as we talked about last week, right? In Spain. Mishpaka, these are the things that we ought to be looking at. As a matter of fact, let me see. Let's go here for 1 second. Yeah. Hold on. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that they also showed that there are still of our people picking cotton,
Oh, as a matter of fact,
too.
let me pick it up from here. I think this is where it's going to be. Let me play this part.
Located a few hours inland from Veracruz. Carmen, who is Yanga?
A hero more than anything.
A black slave. Supposedly, he was a slave of the Spanish who broke the chains.
He freed himself from oppression that the Spanish had over him. And he also liberated the slaves.
What my girlfriend said. That's why they call Yanga the first free town in the Americas.
Oh, man, give me 5, Gustavo. You're the man. You're a genius. You could be a professor. In 1570, 50 years before the Mayflower landed at Plymouth Rock, Gaspar Yanga and several other men and women not only ran away from slavery, but spent 30 years hiding out in the mountains around Veracruz, attacking the Spanish in guerrilla raids and defending their community. The Spanish never could subdue them. Finally, in 1609, the Spanish admitted defeat and offered Yanga his own independent town in exchange for peace. Yanga settlement became what some scholars believe to be the very first town founded by free black people in all of the Americas. Are most of the people around here black?
No. Well, most people aren't completely black, But we are morenos.
Cultures, they combine together and form others.
So what are you? What are you?
Mestizos. Mestizos because we are light brown.
Are you Moreno? Are you Moreno or no?
Look.
What are you, Indian?
I am black.
You're negra? You're very beautiful, negra. Hernan Cortez, the famous Spanish conquistador, arrived in Veracruz in 1519. Then he headed to Mexico City, which the Aztecs called Tenochtitlan. One of his fellow conquistadors was a free black man named Juan Garrido. I'm following in his footsteps. Cortez was dazzled by the city's overall beauty, by its irrigation system, but especially by its gold. He brutally conquered it. Today, Mexico City is constructed on top of ancient Tenochtitlan. With over 21 million residents, it's the largest city in the Western Hemisphere. I've come here to find treasures too. But these are housed in the National Museum of Mexico.
So what are you taking me to see?
We're going to see the casta paintings.
The casta paintings.
I want y'all to see this.
By the end of the 17th century, interracial relationships were on the rise. The Catholic Church allowed marriage between all groups. The law granted freedom to the children of black slaves and indigenous women. White men increasingly impregnated black women.
They always begin with Spanish and Indian, that it makes mestizo.
All right.
Then mestizo and Spanish castiza.
Castiza.
The third one is castiza and Spanish, makes Spanish.
Maria Elisa Velasquez is a professor of history and anthropology. These 18th century casta paintings were painted to show Europeans the diversity of the people here. These 16 images are a sort of an anthropological cookbook, showing the results of mixing the genes of black people, brown people, and white people.
What about me? Which one in the 16?
You will be here, look.
Let me see.
This one, a mulatto. The little kid, that's the mulatto.
The beautiful brown baby like me.
Yes, of course.
What would Barack Obama be?
Also a mulatto.
Okay, Beyonce, she would be mulatto?
Yes.
What would Tiger Woods be?
A lobo with African descent blood and also indigenous blood.
These people were crazy.
Yes, they need pseudo-scientific reasons to explain why some cultures will be inferior and you have to make them slaves.
And they found it.
They found it.
16 shades of blackness.
Yes.
But why were your white people more willing to sleep with black people than my white people?
Quite well, because the culture of the Spanish church allowed the marriage between all the ethnic groups. And also the Spanish people have an heritage more open to the mixture because of the Arabic presence in Spain.
The Moors were in Spain for 800 years or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was kind of easy to have these mixtures. And I think that's a different story from the United States.
By 1810, emboldened by the American Revolution and the French
All right,
Revolution.
you can stop it here. So you can see that the reason why the Spanish allowed some of the mixing over in Mexico and whatnot is because they already had it happening over in Spain. All right, so let me stop it here. Mishpachah, as you can clearly see, we have to take another look at history and try our best to understand things in the right perspective. So let me take this final scripture, and then we will take any comments that you all may have. Let's get Isaiah chapter 30. Isaiah chapter 30. Let me pull it up on the screen. And you can check out the documentary for yourself. Black in Latin America. Let me pull this up on the screen. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 30. And then we'll open up the lines for any of you all who would like to share something. Yeah, these Europeans, they come up with all kinds of different classifications of people. 16 shades of black. All right, Isaiah 30, let's read verses 15. Start from there to 26. 15. Okay, give it a try.
Isaiah 30 and 15.
Uh-huh.
For thus saith Yahuwah Elohim, the Holy One of Israel,
Mm-hmm.
in returning and rest shall you be saved. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength,
Mm-hmm.
and you would not. But he said, no, for we will flee upon horses, therefore shall you flee, and we will ride upon the swift, therefore shall they that pursue you be swift.
Mm-hmm.
1,000 shall flee at the rebuke of one.
When we were supposed to keep the Most High's commandments, we turned the other way, and instead of fleeing others, chasing others, we were the ones running for our lives. Read.
1,000 shall flee at the rebuke of one.
Mm-hmm.
At the rebuke of 5 shall you flee, till you be left as a beacon upon the top of a mountain, and as an ensign on an hill.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore will Yah wait that you may be gracious, that he may be gracious unto you,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore will he be exalted, that he may have mercy upon you.
Read.
For Yahuwah is an Elohim of judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Blessed are all they that wait for him.
And so what I'm trying to say to our family is for us to return back to the laws, statutes, and commandments of our Elohim. Let us not get caught up in the genealogies and all the different things. The scriptures tell us where we'll be. It explains what will happen to us, and believe you me, that's exactly what's happening to us. Okay? Verses 19.
For the people shall dwell in Zion at Jerusalem. Thou shalt weep no more.
And we're not going to weep anymore.
He will be very gracious unto thee at the voice of thy cry. When he shall hear it, he will answer thee. And though Yah give you the bread of adversity and the water of affliction, yet shall not thy teachers be removed into a corner anymore, but thine eyes shall see thy teachers.
Hallelujah. Read.
And thine ears shall hear a word behind thee, saying, This is the way, walk ye in it. When you turn to the right hand, and when you turn to the left, you shall defile also the covering of thy graven images of silver, and the ornaments of thy molten images of gold.
We're going to kick all the Christian stuff to the trash. Read.
Thou shalt cast them away as a menstruous cloth. Thou shalt say unto it, Get thee hence.
Like, get thee hence, Satan. Read.
Then shall he give the rain of thy seed, that thou shalt sow the ground withal, and bread of the increase of the earth, and it shall be fat and plenteous. In that day shall thy cattle feed in large pastures.
Read.
The oxen likewise, and the young asses that ear the ground, shall eat clean provender, which have been winnowed with the shovel and with the fan.
So even our animals will eat non-GMO foods in the kingdom. Mishpachah. Clean food.
Amen.
Read.
And there shall be upon every high mountain and upon every high hill rivers and streams of waters in the day of the great slaughter, when the towers fall.
Read on.
Moreover, the light of the moon shall be as the light of the sun, and the light of the sun shall be sevenfold as the light of 7 days, in the day that Yahuwah bindeth up the breaches of his people.
When he will bind up the breach of his people, not a denomination, read.
And healeth the stroke of their wounds.
That's all we need. And he's going to heal the stroke of our wounds. So, Mishpachah, I'm going to stop here. I pray that everyone has gained some understanding to understand, brothers and sisters, Israel has a very rich history. We've been scattered, mixed into all these different countries. The Most High is doing something that we can't even explain ourselves. We see the information that was documented. We see how the historians are trying to bring certain things out. We can see how the people look Mexican or Indian Mexican or however you want to classify it. But the history is there proving that these people are Hebrews. Now, if you watch the whole thing, you can go on YouTube and check out the whole thing. They actually show that there's a certain place in Mexico where people are still picking cotton. Dark-skinned people still picking cotton. Okay, for very small pesos. Anyway, any comments? The mic is open. The line is open for a few minutes. If anyone would like to comment, just raise your hand and I will allow you to speak. Okay. Go ahead, brother. Shalom. Okay, I think you have your mic muted, so you can unmute it. Let's give it a try. Okay, go ahead.
All right. Shalom, everybody. Shalom.
Shalom.
I just wanted to point out how amazing your work in terms of he sent Paul to the Gentiles, and the Gentiles that Paul went to, they bought the Bible here for us, and now seeing that the quote unquote Indians in Trinidad here, they are called Arawaks, and the Caribs are Arawaks, and it's just so amazing that you have put things in place that they would come here and bring our culture here to tie in with the Bible in the last days. Now that knowledge has been increased.
Thank you so much for sharing that, brother. I'm going to put you back on mute.
Thanks. Shalom.
Shalom. Let's get Brother Obadiah. Brother Obadiah, talk to us. Let's see, unmute. Brother Obadiah. Okay,
Can
Brother
you hear me,
Obadiah.
family? Shalom, family.
Shalom, Brother Obadiah.
Very, very informative. I had posted a link in the chat. I was hoping you would have time to pull it up on the screen for the family.
Okay.
While you scroll forward, I think a lot of these, like you said, the Hebrews are trying to make Israel look the same. They're missing a lot of this information, and they're running with the popular images that the Europeans and Hollywood have given us, and they just need to do a little bit more research, and they'll find out that Israel, is scattered. And although we're taking on many different identities, the Europeans know who they ran into. This one image is just further proof. The second point I want to point out is notice that video from Dr. Gates was talking about Latin America. So if they research the term Latin, that traces back to Rome. And once you pull this image up from Google Images, you're going to notice he's another Italian explorer, which we all know ties back into the prophecies.
Okay. And stand by, because I would like you to close out with prayer too. So stand by.
Okay. Sure.
So is this the picture that you wanted us to take a look at, brother?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, brethren, you can see over on the right side, Italian explorer Giovanni de Verrazzano, 1524. The complexion of the Carolina Indians is black, not much different from that of the Ethiopians. Their hair is black and thick and not very long, tied behind the head like a small tail. For as the physique of these men, they are well proportioned, of medium height, a little taller than we are. They have broad chests, strong arms and legs, and other parts of the body are well composed. They are broad in the face and have big black eyes. They have a sharp cunning and are agile and swift runners. That's from the Italian explorer Giovanni da Verrazzano, 1524. So much history, so much history. Okay, let's see. Anyone else? Let's see. Let me lower a hand here. Okay, anyone else would like to share their thoughts before we say shalom? Okay, so with that said, Mishpaka, okay, there's one JR. JR. Let's allow you to speak. JR, go ahead, JR.
Brother Yona and everyone, good evening.
Good evening. Or good night.
Good night, yeah, for sure. So I had a chance to go to Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually went to the Mayan ruins and actually saw all of these artifacts live and direct. And as I was doing the tour, they had all of these photographs, and I said, "Oh, the history of these people are black." And the tour guy said to me, "Not black, mulatto." I said, "No, these people are black." He's like, "No, not black. They're not black." So just wanted to really state that that is actually true if you actually really go there.
Mm-hmm.
And look at the history from the 1600s. The history is truly of Israel, but they do not associate anything with black. They at all, and that is true. That was my experience there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And where are you where do you reside? Where are you calling from?
Atlanta, brother Jermaine.
Okay. Well, shalom, shalom. Thanks for sharing that so much. Okay, let us see who else would like to share. Anyone else would like to share something? I'll take one more, and then we'll have Brother Obadiah close up with prayer. Just raise your hand, and we'll bring you through. Okay, let's see. Yeah, Mishpaka, when it comes to complexion, a lot of people, for some reason, the dark skin is good for everything else except as being recognized as something of status. The dark skin is good to go to the beach. The dark skin, you have beautiful complexion, blah, blah, blah. All that is good, but it's never good enough to be noted as high up in the food chain per se. Okay, so there's that problem right there. Anyway, Mishpaka, with that said, I'm going to stop here. I hope that this has been a blessing to you all, and I hope that it inspires you to go out and read and study some more and try to make the connection. Try to look behind some of the prejudices and some of the things that they try to divert and speed bumps to put in your way and whatnot. Look past those things and make the connection, because Israel is truly mixed among these nations. So with that said, Brother Obadiah, can you take us home in Yeshua's name?
Sure. Can I be heard?
Loud and clear, brother.
All right. Almighty Yah, we come before your throne, covered in the blood of Yeshua. Thank you for another night of fellowship, praising you for keeping your covenant to the house of Israel, Father. We ask that you give us the strength to carry on and fulfill your prophecies, Father. If you don't help us, we won't stand in these last days, Father. We need your guidance. We need your strength in these last evil days, Father. We thank you for servants like Brother Yonah, Father, for being faithful. We ask that you continue to give him strength and humble and grace to feed your flock, Father. We ask that you watch over the house, scattered to the four corners as we rest and raise up in the morning to do this all over again, Father. We thank you for the many blessings, small and great, that you bestow upon us. And we don't never take your name for granted. In the name of Yeshua, we offer this prayer before your throne. Amen.
Amen. Hallelujah. Thank you so much, Mishpaka. I pray that the Most High bless and keep you all, and that he cause his face to shine upon you all and give you all peace. Shalom, shalom, family. Shalom, shalom. Ya
ויחסים לך